You are listening to The Scoop, Inside Carolina's premier football recruiting podcast, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. All right, welcome into The Scoop. I'm your host, Ross Martin, as always, joined by Donnie Scoops Callahan. This is a Scoop podcast brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. What's going on, Don?
Not too much. Life is pretty simple right now. Just doing a couple of high school practices, starting up with spring practice, doing a couple of those things. Normal stuff around the house. My daughter finally finished her lacrosse season, so not much of that stuff going on. And just, really, it's kind of the quiet before the storm because we're in May, and before you know, it's going to be June, and June is a crazy month in recruiting. So.
Yeah,
I'm kind of enjoying this. What's up with Ross?
Well, I was going to ask you, when is your life not simple? I feel like you live probably kind of an easy living life.
June
other than the changes in the calendar.
June is pretty crazy because last year it was really crazy because it was the first time recruits can make visits. So everybody was visiting every single day, and there's tons of visits, and there was a lot of unplanned visits that happened and all that. So I'm hoping that this is a little bit more structured so we kind of have a better idea. But I expect June to be pretty crazy because it seems like everybody's going to use June to kind of finalize or help them finalize their decisions and then make a commitment sometime later on in the summer.
How many camps are they having in June?
I don't know. It's not the full 10. Okay. I think it actually might be like half of that.
They're allowed 10?
Yeah, they're allowed 10.
Okay.
And Mac Brown has really, I think other than maybe his first summer, hasn't used all 10.
Okay.
So, which is nice.
Okay, let's go through the schedule here. We're recording Wednesday morning as we usually try to do. And on Tuesday, UNC got a commitment. This is kind of the news. It's kind of nice because it's right before our podcast recording, a commitment, pulling up his profile here, clicking on different tabs, from Nolan McConnell, a 6'6", 280-pound offensive tackle from Stafford, Virginia. He's a high 3-star, 432 in the nation, 32 offensive tackle, and number seven player in Virginia. So we're going to talk about that, all about that. So that's coming up next. We're then going to get into just a basic kind of run through of what's going on with UNC right now in recruiting with the 2023 class in terms of coaches' visits. Quick kind of a check-in on the calendar. Don's going to talk about his last 2 weekly scoops, if there's anything worth talking about there. And then we have a very special interview with Alex White, UNC's director of on-campus recruiting. Now, if you listen to our last episode, we had an interview with Patrick Suddas. I think I pronounced his name wrong on that podcast. But we recorded Alex White right after that, and we're releasing it today or when you listen to this about 2 weeks later. And then we're going to get to kind of some non-recruiting stuff related, transfer portal, been some drama around the country, kind of a national perspective on the transfer portal as it relates to college football. And then we'll look back at the NFL draft because UNC had 4 players selected. Is that right? 4? Yeah, I think 4. Yeah. And that'll be it. All right, Don, how do you feel about that schedule?
I feel great.
Yeah. We finally have
feel?
I feel good. I feel it's a good mix of topics related to UNC football, recruiting, and otherwise. All right, let's get into it. So, as I mentioned, UNC yesterday afternoon landed commitment. I was actually in the dentist chair when it happened, Don.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Did you know?
Regular cleaning?
Yeah, regular cleaning. I actually had I had a chipped tooth that they fixed, and then other than that, just normal stuff.
Did they numb you?
No, it was like very small. So I had never had chipped tooth before.
During the whole COVID stuff, I had a lot of, and I think you knew a little bit about this, a lot of oral surgery where I absolutely hate that needle that they use to numb you. I know it's necessary, but I have grown a tremendous hatred for it. So anyway.
Okay, a little dental insight there. Yeah, nothing big. So yeah, did you know this was coming?
It was definitely trending in this direction.
Okay.
And I don't think it was coming now, but I mean, I definitely it started to kind of seem like it was trending in that direction.
Okay, so Nolan McConnell from Virginia. Let's get into it, Don. Lay out kind of what happened for him over the last year or so for him to commit to Carolina?
Yeah. So in hindsight, you look back and it seemed pretty obvious that this kid was looking for, he didn't want to go too far away. He received a bunch of scholarship offers, but if you look at his actual visits, he made a lot of visits, but they were all within a decent driving range for him. And then also there seemed to be a high focus on academic schools, which is why UNC and UVA were the two schools that were the most likely to land him. Obviously, UNC landed him. So he first came to North Carolina, camped in June, did not receive an offer, came back for a game during the season. And then he was actually the first player that Jack Bicknell offered as UNC coach. So Bicknell was hired on one day, and then I think it was 3 days later, he offered McConnell, which is the strange thing with that was that McConnell was not McConnell was not offered or recruited by Louisville. Mm-hmm. So usually when a coach comes over to another school, they kind of start offering guys that they had previously offered, especially this early in the process. Anyway, almost immediately him and his father, Nolan, that is, came and made a visit to North Carolina. I think it was a couple weeks later. He returned with his mom to let his mom kind of see the campus. And prior to North Carolina offering, it seemed like, just kind of talking to a lot of different people who had a really good feel for this recruitment, that he was on the verge of committing to UVA, which is why you saw a lot of crystal balls for UVA.
Just one.
Well, no, there was at least two, because Doan had one. Maybe they were changed. Doan had one, and so did Jackie from the UVA site.
I just see one. Only Doan.
Okay. Maybe Jackie got hers. Jackie was we can get into Jackie helping us out if we want to later on. But anyway. So I kept on hearing, well, yeah, I see North Carolina offer, but he keeps on, we're hearing that he's on the verge of committing UVA. But then you see all these visits, and the timing of these visits were really kind of interesting. And so then the only school he scheduled an official visit to was North Carolina for the first weekend in June. That's when I kind of thought things would be finalized. Okay. And it was interesting to me that he didn't schedule any other official visits. And, but he had said he was going to. So anyway, I know the UNC staff came and visited his school on, I guess it was Tuesday. Obviously, UNC cannot speak with him, but they can speak with his coach. Okay. And then
they visited him Tuesday, and he committed later that day.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think he picked UNC over? Have you talked to him, or did just Jackie talk to him?
I didn't speak to him since Jackie was there and was able to get a video interview and talk to him. I haven't spoken to him since he committed, but I did speak to him after his two most recent visits.
Okay.
And
so why do you think he picked UNC over Virginia?
I would assume he just felt more comfortable. I mean, that's what ultimately this kind of comes down to, because I mean, if we're being objective about this, they're both ACC schools. They're both decent driving distances. Maybe UVA is a little bit closer to him than UNC. They're both great academic programs. The football programs, I know UNC fans are going to like to hear this, but are kind of sort of similar and just in recent success. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these things come down to, when you get on campus, where do you feel most comfortable? What coaches do you feel most comfortable speaking with? And UNC obviously was the one, and I don't think it's something like a longevity sort of thing, because obviously UNC changed offensive line coaches, and then also UVA had a bunch of changes on their staff, although their offensive line coach remained the same. But Coach TJ, which we everybody who listens to this knows when his birthday is. Yeah, so I think it's just a comfort thing. He felt more comfortable at North Carolina and maybe believed a little bit more in their pitch on what the future brings to the program.
Yeah, and a really good offer list. I mean, North Carolina, Arkansas, Boston College, Coastal Carolina, Florida State, Liberty, Michigan State, and who recruits him from Michigan State?
Coach Chris Kapilovic.
There you go, a good friend, Coach Cap. NC State, Nebraska, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Wake Forest. So kind of the level, that kind of mid to high level of programs in college football, not the elites, but a bunch of Power 5 schools there. Okay, do you expect him to play tackle as of right now?
I guess I would say yes. I I know he camped in North Carolina, and I know I saw him. I just can't remember him, if that sounds strange. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you know how it is. You go to these camps, you're trying to look at. You have probably like 24 guys you're trying to focus on, and you're trying to look at any other guys sticking out. So I don't remember him too much from the camp, but I do have notes on him. Yeah, I mean, from his film, it looks like he could play tackle, but I would like to see him in person before I kind of say if he's a tackle or guard. And really, when it comes down to it, I mean, how many guys do we see? We're like, okay, they're a tackle. They get into college and they end up moving to guard or center or whatever. I mean, that happens all the time.
Sounds good. Okay, Nolan McConnell commits to UNC. The second commitment in UNC's 2023 class. A little earlier than we expected. I mean, in the last podcast, we were kind of projecting the first commitment, the next commitment to be in June. And in speaking with Coach Brown and Patrick Suddas, June is kind of when things start happening, but a little earlier here on May 2nd or May 3rd. Yeah, today's May 4th, Star Wars Day. UNC gets
Are you celebrating?
No, I mean,
are you a Star Wars guy?
Not anymore. I actually grew up. I collected the original figures from the original films. How about that?
Do you still have them? Because they're worth a lot of money.
They're in my parents' attic. I probably have 300 figures.
You need to go get them and put them, like, make sure that they're safe.
And I have a bunch of the vehicles, like the ships, Millennium Falcon, X-Wing.
Do you have them in still their original packaging?
No, I played with them. I played with them, when I was
last night, right?
Yeah, that's right.
In preparation for today.
Sat in my living room by myself and played lightsaber wars with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader.
Oh my, this is sounding X-rated.
What? But yeah, that's actually a fun fact about me. I used to collect Star Wars figures, and I've thought about selling them. I don't know how much they'd really go for. I mean, some maybe $20 a piece, but I have a bunch, so I've always wondered. All right,
I think you can make a good amount of money.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not going to be able to retire from inside Carolina, but it would be a good amount of money to do something fun with.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. Nolan McConnell commits to UNC from Stafford, Virginia. Do you know where Stafford, Virginia is, Don?
Yes, I have been there.
You might need to take a trip up there soon.
It's on the way to DC.
Is it not in the mountains? Is it more Northern Virginia?
I'm pretty sure it's.
Okay. I believe you.
Well, I could be wrong. But
I'm looking it up right now.
UNC signed a defensive back, Tim Scott. Wasn't he from?
Before my time of covering recruiting. I'm looking up right now. Internet's really slow. Looking up right now. This is bad radio. Stafford, Virginia.
It is on the way to DC. So it's not. It's between Fredericksburg and DC. Anyone who travels at 95.
Well, that's a tough area.
Yeah, knows that. Yeah. Well, just above that, I guess right there, traffic is a beep.
Yeah. Yeah. So on 95, past Richmond, past Fredericksburg. All right, moving on. Good stuff, as they say. Okay. So Don, right now, UNC coaches are out on the road. Can you kind of give us an insight into kind of what's going on now in the recruitment schedule and the recruiting calendar schedule?
Yeah. So I feel like this, I don't want to say it's a formality. I think it's a little bit more than that. But, and now a lot of people want to know, well, where the coaches are. But for the most part, by the end of this period, the coaches will have visited all of the in-state schools, regardless if they have recruits or not. And then all of their top targets will receive at least 2 visits from the staff. And that's each staff can only visit a high school twice during this period, and only once during the week. And
say that part again. Each staff member?
No, each staff.
Each school.
Each college. Yeah, each college can only visit each high school twice during this period. So you typically, depends on the situation on who you actually send. It might be the same coach, or it might be maybe you have the recruiter go to a school just to kind of gather academic stuff, and then you have the offensive line coach go a week later to watch them work out. And it's one of those things, and I'm sure you've done this in the past, where it's gathering exactly where the coaches are going it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you can work on it, and then it changes and it's all wrong and all that. So I don't spend a whole lot of time on that too much. because you guys, I mean, because like I said, I mean, the top target is going to receive 2 visits, and the timing of it, people want to look into the timing, and the timing of it really, the timing is more about what that school's workout schedule is, or if it's a kid who plays whatever, runs track or plays baseball, then they want to go during one of their events and watch them, participate in that event. That dictates when they visit what school and who and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we're in right now. You'll see, you more than anything else, you'll probably see a lot more 2024 offers go out, maybe a couple 2023s. A lot of camp invites will be extended, but that's what we're really dealing with now. It's not really like a time period. It used to be big, but it's not really a time period where a lot of things really happen recruiting wise. Like stuff with Nolan yesterday is not common.
You said they visit every school in North Carolina?
That's Max Brown's plan. Fedora had the same thing.
That seems impossible.
Well, I mean, if you have 10 assistant coaches. So, I mean, if you really wanted to do it, you could. But do I think it actually happens?
There's no way. Because think about all the schools out on the coast and in the mountains. Like, in the mountains, there's, 1 or 2 schools per county. And you're driving, it might take an hour or 2 to get between schools. An hour. And then, I mean, it's tough. And then the Guilford County has 15 high schools. Mecklenburg County probably has 20.
I go to schools a lot. I'll tell you, like Guilford County and Charlotte, I mean, I can knock out, and I can knock out like 6 if I try it.
Yeah.
Not to bring up Michael Clark, but he does like 8 sometimes if he's going to like Charlotte. So it can be done. Now, yes, when you're going like Eastern North Carolina or out into the mountains, I mean, I do at most 3 schools. I try to stick to 2 just because timing and all that sort of stuff.
Okay. Good stuff. So that's what's going on now with the calendar for the next 2 weeks. Okay. Your weekly scoops, just a quick kind of overview to get, people to interested in what's going on. What'd you do last week on your weekly scoop, if you want to promote it for a little bit?
Last week, I tried to catch up with all of the signees. There was 2 I wasn't able to catch up with, Tayshawn Chapman and Tyon Holloway. But I caught up with everybody else, just kind of laid out what's been going on with them, what's their workout look like, any sort of weight changes, do they know their jersey number, just basic stuff like that. What they've been told as far as playing time and the game plan for them once they get on campus, that sort of thing. So it's an interesting piece just to kind of see what they've been up to, because I feel like we kind of forget about those guys.
Yeah, and in that group, you have Omarion Hampton and Andre Green. I think those 2 guys could be counted on to play some in 2022. Those are the 2 that I'm kind of eyeing as maybe potential breakout players as freshmen. Especially, I mean, wide receiver, they need help, and Omarion Hampton's such a stud. So definitely check that out, the weekly scoop. Don goes through all the different players with a lot of info on each one. Okay, and the weekly scoop for Inside Count subscribers from this week.
Yeah, this week is kind of almost like it's like my notebook in a way. Like I always feel like it's good to kind of lay out where the recruits have been this offseason, if they visit North Carolina, when, how many times, and then what official visits they have scheduled so far. And I feel like, we could talk to sources, we could talk to high school coaches, we could talk to all that sort of stuff, and that's great and that's informative. But I mean, these are hard facts. And if a kid is going to make a visit to a school, it says something. And I think kind of laying that out and looking at it from a position standpoint, you can kind of get a feel for things and learn different things. What's going on at each position. And so because it's a lot of information, we cut it in half. We're doing offense. We did offense this week. We'll do defense next week.
Okay. Did you have Nolan McConnell on your mock class?
I did.
You did?
I did. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Another win for the Donster. Add it to the list. Okay. Good stuff. Let's do a quick ad read, and then we'll go to our interview with Alex White. The Scoop and all of Inside Carolina podcasts are brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com, your one-stop shop for all your UNC apparel needs. T-shirts, jerseys, sweatshirts, hats, things for the house, the home, the office, everything you need related to UNC. on right off campus on Franklin Street, Johnny T-shirt, and online, johnnytshirt.com. A lot more stuff online. They have great customer service, very personal, it's a small local business. And their headquarters, right down in Hillsborough is where their warehouse is. So Johnny T-shirt and johnnytshirt.com. When you support them, it helps us and keeps this podcast and all the great content we do rolling. And all Inside Carolina subscribers can get 10% off their order with the discount code found on the Tar Pit and UNC basketball message boards. Hopefully, I think we got a lot of new subscribers after that 60% off promo we ran. A lot of promos coming up, and they've already ran. So welcome to any new listeners. Remember to rate and review this podcast. We probably, I don't know how many new listeners we get over the course of months and years, but we do need to kind of welcome them in and thank them for listening to. So Johnny T-shirt, johnnytshirt.com, and remember to rate and review this podcast. We'll be right back with the Alex White interview, UNC's on-campus director of recruiting, and we'll be right back after that. And welcome back to the Scoop, Inside Carolina's #1 football recruiting podcast. I'm your host, Ross Martin, with Don Callahan as always, and we are joined by a very special guest. We have UNC's director of recruiting, Alex White, who is a UNC alum and has been with UNC in a lot of different capacities. What's going on, Alex?
Hi, how are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So, Alex, we want to have you on because you've been with UNC for a while, but your current role is director of recruiting, and I know you deal a lot with like on-campus recruiting visits, things like that. So I wanted to give you the floor to kind of explain to our listeners what you do for UNC.
Yeah, so as director of recruiting, I basically, whenever a recruit steps on campus, that is part of my domain. So we have a large on-campus staff, and we're really lucky to have that. And so we kind of split it up in different capacities. So I oversee all of our big recruiting events. So whether that's a game day or a junior day, taking recruits to a basketball game, things like that. And then I also handle a lot of our strategic communication plans. So coordinating with our creative content team to come up with graphics to send to recruits, or planning out, our 12-month content calendar, and capturing things we need throughout the year. So this week, for example, we're going ahead and start on some video content that we probably won't really need or send out until August, but the summer's kind of busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. So trying to capture that when we have time. And then a huge part of it is relationships. So maintaining relationships, not only with recruits and their families, but with people around campus and in Chapel Hill that can help us out. So whether it's local restaurants that we use a lot, or maybe local vendors that we use for recruiting events, and then people on campus, like professors at the business school, professors in the journalism school, people over at the athletic department or in the ticket office or compliance. So it's a huge relationship piece of it as well.
So we just last episode we talked to Pat Sudds, who's the general manager, and he talked about that marketing aspect, what I think is like the videos and the graphics and all that stuff. How much synergy is that with you and your role in devising a strategy for each recruit? And how much do you work with Pat with that closely? Is that kind of where you step in?
Yeah, Pat and I work together on that pretty much every day. So we're having conversations all the time to see what our kids are up to. If somebody had an injury, making sure that we're sending them a get well soon graphic, or if they have a big game coming up, even if it's baseball or basketball, making sure that we're sending them a good luck. And so a lot of that is being very proactive about it and knowing these recruits well enough to know what they have going on or what their interests are, as opposed to the kind of reactive side of it. And it's like, oh man, recruit A got this dope graphic from this school, we need to play catch up. So we try and really be on the proactive end of that. And so we have a 12-month calendar that has every single graphic and every single video that we want to send out. And so, sometimes that works great. Sometimes it doesn't. There might be some things that pop up last minute, but we really try and make sure that everything we know is going to come up in the year, we can work in advance on that. So that way, when those random one-off things do happen, our graphic team isn't overloaded. They've got time to focus on that ASAP need because they've already done the other things we need for that week ahead of time.
Great. Yeah, I think we're going to get into some more questions about your on-campus side. But before that, Don has a kind of a question kind of build into that part of the interview. Don?
Yeah, so this is kind of like a personal neat sort of thing is that I've kind of watched you kind of climb the ladder basically, because
Yes.
I've seen you started as, well, I'll just tell you, I mean, just, how'd you kind of start with this? What was
Yeah.
kind of the process that you kind of worked up the ladder to basically, come to the top basically?
So it's actually really funny. You get your Facebook memories, your notification every morning, right?
Yeah.
So this morning, I got a notification that 6 years ago, when I was a senior in high school, I had been accepted into the student
Oh,
officer
wow.
program at Carolina.
Happy anniversary.
I know, 6 years. I'm like, Lord,
6-year anniversary.
But so I grew up a huge football fan, and I don't think that I realized that I could potentially turn that a career until once I got here. But in high school, I loved football, and really my whole childhood. And so when I got accepted to Carolina, my senior spring of high school, I said, you know what, I will do anything I can for UNC football. Like I will mop the floors, like I will get involved there. And so I started out as a student office assistant. It's our student program. They're called SOAs. And that was great. I worked some camps over the summer. I remember my first day, it was Fedora's Freak Show. That was the first event I ever worked. I graduated high school like 5 days before. And I remember walking in and seeing these players and being like, oh my gosh, like I just couldn't contain myself. So it's kind of a full circle moment today, but started, stuffing envelopes for a couple hours a week. My first boss was actually Gunnar Brewer. And so I think Brewer.
We know Brewer.
Yeah. And so if you can like work, right, and you have like a heartbeat, Gunnar Brewer will take you under his wing. And so that's
he will find something for you to do.
Yeah, he's demanding. He's demanding.
Yes, but in like the best way. I mean, I love Brew.
Yeah.
And so I started working for him, and that was when Annie Hansen was still here. So really worked my way up and became an admissions ambassador. So that gave me the opportunity to tour our prospects. That's an NCAA rule that you got to be, certified by the admissions office. It's kind of complicated, but so I did that and really worked my way up throughout the Fedora era and started developing really great relationships with recruits and our coaching staff. And then when the coaching change happened, it was, middle of my junior year. So I'd been here for 3 years and had, really established myself in our recruiting department and with our prospects. And so during that transition, I was able to kind of serve as a point piece for some of the new staff. And I think that really solidified my role. Because at first, I'm this 20-year-old girl, I don't know if Mac Brown, this Hall of Fame national championship winning coach, is going to want the 20-year-old student intern around. And he just took me in, and him and Sally took me in with the biggest arms and were so welcoming to me. So I worked with them, for the next year. I graduated, went to App State, and loved my time in Boone. It was short. COVID hit. So then I went to Virginia Tech. And it was actually Miss Sally that called me and said, I think you need to come back to Chapel Hill. And I mean, of course, this is home for me. So originally came back to serve as Coach Brown's kind of executive assistant and handled a lot of his recruiting. And then when we had some turnover in the recruiting department about a year ago, I slid into this role as director of recruiting.
So what was your, I guess, major, your planned major when you were in high school for college? And did that change at all once you kind of realized that you could do some things in the football field?
Yeah, so it's crazy. My whole life, I wanted to be a doctor. I mean,
Okay.
I went to summer camps every summer. I did an internship or kind of a shadowing program up at Johns Hopkins in high school. I did an internship at my local emergency room, and I wanted to be director of sports medicine for a football team, or maybe an orthopedic surgeon and something in sports. And then I was kind of rethinking that going into college to begin with. And, just, I think being a doctor is something that, people just, oh, you're smart, you're going to Carolina, you should be a doctor. And I'm like, sounds good to me, perfect, I'll do that. And so then I got here, and I remember meeting Annie Hansen and thinking to myself, like, I could see myself doing that one day. And so she was kind of my first inspiration into this role. And then the more that I got involved, so my first couple of years of college, I worked here the whole time, but wanted to dabble in the marketing department and shadowed them at a couple of baseball games. I was actually an intern for the Carolina Hurricanes for a whole season in their public relations department. And so I wanted to try out a couple different things in sports because I really wanted to make sure that I loved the avenue that I was kind of going into, and it just solidified my love and passion for recruiting.
Where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school?
So I'm from the Outer Banks in North Carolina. Okay. I went to Manio High School.
Very small.
Manio Elementary. Oh my gosh, I graduated
very
with
small.
107 kids, and it's the same 107 that I started kindergarten with.
Yeah. What town? What town did you grow up in, Manio?
Yep, the town is Manio.
Cool. Yeah. I've been through there. Cool. Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask about Annie. Annie was great. I remember working with her, and talking with her when she was in town. So I mean, you kind of touched on my question, but she was at Oklahoma. She went to UNC to Oklahoma to work with what's the coach's name there, Don?
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah,
Lincoln
Riley. And then now she's the executive director of recruiting at USC under Coach Riley. So
wow.
I mean, Annie was great. I thought she was such a special personality and so dynamic, and seemed like she really took control of the job and knew what she was doing. So that was, I mean, I kind of answered your question there with kind of the influence she had, but I could see how seeing her and what she did could
yeah. Well, I think like growing up in football, you see the coaches, you see the players, you don't really see a lot of the support staff. And this role that I have now, Annie was the first person to have that here at Carolina. Growing up, you didn't see women in these roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw her, and I mean, Annie, she's beautiful and she's put together, she's got the best wardrobe, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like perfect.
Yeah.
Like there's a place for me in football. And so I think I didn't get to work for Annie for long, because she left to go to Oklahoma after my freshman year. My freshman year was still kind of when I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. But I remember that like instant, oh my gosh, like I could do that. And so I think seeing her in that role, like I said earlier, really solidified my thought that, okay, I have a place here.
Yeah, she was a big time dresser. You'd be at these camps with all these dudes and all these overweight men, and like Annie Hansen's like super put together and like dressed like a Hollywood star. It was always kind of funny. So I was going to ask you touched on going to App State and Virginia Tech, and I remember like kind of following it because you see on Twitter like Alex got this job and that job. You were like boom boom. What happened? Like, did you like get an apartment? Like, how do you move that quickly? And like, it must have been a crazy time.
Like, let my dad answer this question for you, because this is like the worst thing for him. So yeah, I graduated a semester early at Carolina, so I still had an apartment in Chapel Hill when I moved to Boone. I moved to Boone, and oh my gosh, when I moved there, it was like 20 degrees. It snowed 4 inches. It's blowing sideways. Snow's literally like pelting me in my face. My parents are, they had a vacation planned in Florida, and they're like, oh, it's a chilly 63 degrees here. And I'm like, well, I'm in Narnia, so I'm really happy for you. So got an apartment in Boone, and then the opportunity at Virginia Tech just kind of fell in my lap. And
how quickly was that? Was that like?
So I started. Let me think. I started at App in January, and Virginia Tech. My first day at Virginia Tech was August 31st.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. So I became an expert on subleasing, and got my apartment in. And keep in mind, I still had to pay rent in Chapel Hill from when I was a student,
which isn't cheap.
Not cheap. And so moved to Boone, and then thank you, sweet Lord, somebody subleased my apartment in Boone, and then moved to Blacksburg. And Blacksburg was hard to find a place because it's such a college town. I moved there right as the semester was starting, so like everything was sold out. I mean, luckily I got a great spot. I loved my apartment there, but like a little probably more expensive than I originally wanted to pay. And then a couple months later, here I am going back to UNC, and my dad, I mean, we became pro packers, how to box up a kitchen. I mean, we had a system that dad would stay behind with the movers. My mom and I would go ahead and we would unpack the kitchen. And then once the movers would get there, like all the little, like my closet was already set up. The kitchen was already set up. And then so dad kind of instructed them with the big things. So
yeah, I mean, it's just great.
I had 4 apartments in 11 months.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was kind of the point. So when did you move? When did you leave Blacksburg? So you moved there in August. When did you move to Chapel Hill? Back to Chapel Hill.
January.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
I was
Oh.
literally just there for football.
I hate
season.
moving. So,
Yeah,
so this
me
sounds
too.
like a nightmare to me right now.
Don,
this story.
you're gonna be in that house you're in right now until you die, probably.
Yeah, probably.
So my dad was like, I'm not moving you again until I'm moving you to your husband's house and he can do it. And I'm
That's
like,
yeah.
great.
I mean, it kind of shows you the nature of this business with coaches moving and staff members moving all the time and GAs and stuff. So it's just kind of a crazy example of that.
Well, so when I
Don?
moved here, I got movers, and I think it was like $1,000 or whatever it was, but it was so worth it. That's my best advice. If you can
Oh my
afford it,
gosh.
get movers. Do not move if you don't have to.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I remember the first time, because when I moved from Chapel Hill, it was my college apartment. Like you
Yeah.
got some stuff, but
Yeah.
you accumulate. But when I remember the first time that I moved, but my big move from Boone to Blacksburg, I remember like I got the job and I had to move there pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And I was also still finishing out my time at App, so I didn't have a ton of time. I was a little stressed about this big move. It was, during training camp for App. I was going to training camp at Tech. And I remember thinking that I had to like box the kitchen up and like being like nauseous about it. I'm like, this is giving me the worst anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And then I called my mom.
Quickly, Don, before you ask your question, what was your role? What was your title at App, and what was your title at Virginia Tech?
So at App, I was recruiting and operations assistant.
Okay.
And at Virginia Tech, I was director of on-campus recruiting.
Okay, similar to what you're in now, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, Don.
What does not on a big visit day, because we'll get to that, but on a typical like today, besides the fact that you have to be on a podcast with 2 morons, what's like your typical
highlight of my day.
what's your typical routine on a typical day?
Yeah, so I get in the office and I oversee our student program. And so I make sure that I've got everything organized for our students coming in throughout the day. And some girls are, they feel more comfortable doing things on the computer, and some girls feel more comfortable editing the pictures or whatever it may be, right? So I just look at who's coming that day, look at the to-do list of things that need to get done. And then also if coaches have given me anything, just kind of delegate that out. So that kind of takes up my first little bit. And then a huge thing is just rechecking our recruiting board, because that changes every day, and making sure that if anybody gets added or if anybody we offered, I'm kind of documenting that correctly on my end. So that's kind of my first little bit, and that probably takes an hour or 2. And then it's a lot of talking with Pat about upcoming graphics, or Coach Brown might be on the phone with the recruit and he'll call me in there. So it's honestly like one of the things that I love about this job is that every day is so different. And this time of year, people always say, oh man, like you're in the off season, what are you going to do? And I'm like, work, This is not in an off season. And so this time of the year, we can have recruits on campus theoretically every day from March 1st to like the last or the second to last weekend in June, whatever that date is. Like I think it's June 26th, right? So we can have a recruit here all of those days. And when you get a recruit on campus, that is really when you can make an impression for that family on your school. And so whenever a recruit is here, that takes priority over everything else, because you can send them all the graphics and you can, evaluate them. Pat might think differently about the evaluation, but you can evaluate them and send them whatever. But if they come on your campus and they don't have a good time, then I feel like everything else that you've done has been for nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of my time is dedicated to that when kids are on campus. And it's fun. It's a lot, but it's really fun.
You mentioned building relationships with families and recruits and stuff, and you just said that Coach Brown could call you into your room. Can you talk to what can you legally do with the recruit and his family? Is it only on campus, or can you talk on the phone and stuff?
So I can talk on the phone with them. I can text them as long as they're of recruitable age, or we can only text them after September 1st of their junior year. But if a recruit calls me or a parent calls me, then I can answer and I can talk to them. And there's different rules throughout the year because based on the calendar of how many times a week coaches can call and things like that. Who can they call? So it's kind of like a really jump. I mean, it's 1 month this, 1 month this. And so it can be a lot to keep up
Yeah.
with. But no, I can, they can say, hey, can I call you? And I'm like, yeah, give me 5 minutes, call me and whatever, call me at this time. And so that's how a lot of the planning gets done. Our coaches are so busy and they do a really, really incredible job with the recruiting. And I mean, they're balancing 100 things. So anything that us as support staff can do to alleviate them, like making sure the mom knows where to park when she gets here,
Yeah.
or saying, hey, are you still good for 2:00? Just those little things that I can go to the coach and be like, hey, Coach Bignell, I talked to recruits mom and she's confirmed this. And so it just kind of takes that off their plate. And it's also really good for them to have more connections with people on our staff. And a huge part of what I do is connect with the moms. The coaches and the dads all the time will hit it off, but it's nice to have like a female presence. And when the boys are talking football and some of the moms love it and I love it too, I'll sit in there and listen. And then sometimes the mom will look at me and she's like, do you want to like not sit in here? And I'm like, 100%, let's go do something else. And so it's really nice that when they step foot on campus, I'm not a stranger. They've already developed a relationship with me, whether it's over one phone call or over 4 Zooms, whatever it is. And so that way the visit is just a little bit easier.
And I'm assuming, any staff member can do what you do in terms of talking with recruits, right? Like Pat can talk to recruits and parents and families and stuff. And
yeah,
as long as they call you, and as long as
it's the rules. Pretty much the recruit can call whoever they want,
Okay.
So that really helps. So if the recruit has a great relationship with X, Y, or Z, whoever it is, they can make that call.
Great. Don, go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to do, and I kind of alluded to this in my prior question, but like a big recruiting day, like the spring game or the Showtime camp or whatever it may be, or maybe just a big official visit weekend. What does that look like for you? I imagine you probably get to campus incredibly early and all that, but what does that day kind of look like to you?
I imagine there's a lot of planning too, leading
Yeah.
up to that too. I don't know how much you want to get into that.
It's so much planning, and there's so many little things that sometimes you have to make sure that you think of. And if you don't think of that one little thing, it can
Like parking
passes, making sure they know where to park. There's just so many things that go into it. And so basically my students do an incredible job. I could not do it without them. And so we had a lot of turnover. We didn't hire new students in COVID. And so last year, I pretty much had to hire like 20-some new students.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm like, whew, okay, it's a little intimidating because I had managed the student program at App and at Virginia Tech, but it was my first time managing it here. Things are different everywhere you go. And so there's kind of like a process to make sure that everyone has credentials and their compliance form, and we're, all of that set up and it's in order, and that we're getting guest names. And well, we can't send them the parking graphic because they're 2024s. We can't communicate with them yet. So, they do a really good job of doing some of that tedious stuff. So I'll input everything. And then when they come in, they know, okay, let me check what forms have been made, where are we at on credentials? And then they can start doing that, which is really, really great. And then I'll work with our parking services. I'll work with the caterers, all of our vendors to make sure that everything's good. And then it's also communicating with our coaches. Hey, this is our list. Can you see if this one person can come? We're having a hard time getting in touch with this recruit. Can you see who he's planning on bringing? Because the last thing we want to happen is that a top recruit get here and we're not prepared for it, right? And so we just want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can. So if Zach Rice is coming, that we've got a credential for Mary Rice, or things like that. So it's a lot of communication, around everything. And then one thing that I do too is for these big recruiting events, I have walkthroughs with our staff. And so people always say, walkthroughs are a huge part of football, right? I mean, that's when you learn and you really visualize the play, right? And so I'm like, we're going to do the same thing in recruiting. So every single thing, we have a walkthrough. Okay, this is how you get to the parking deck. This is where you pick them up. This is where you put the parking sign. All right, this is the route you have to take back. You can't, it's a different route because on game days, transportation says you can't take this road. So it's a lot of things in advance you have to think of. And then I just want to make sure that everybody that's working, whether it's a student or somebody on our recruiting staff or whoever it is, knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And so what I do is I put together a manual, and it has a big itinerary. And then it has an itinerary with like all the details of who needs to be where, when. And then it's got an assignment sheet. So you can control F your name. Okay, where am I supposed to be when? And then it's got a page full of what each assignment needs, what you need to make sure you bring. So if your assignment at registration requires you to have a computer, you'll know that. If your assignment at registration is going to require you to be outside and you need to bring a coat, you'll know that. And so I try and make sure that everyone has as much information as they can on the front end, because when we have however many kids in, whether it's 30 or 130 for a big game day, we're kind of running all over the place because you never know what recruit walks in or who's going to need something or what coach you're trying to find. You just don't know. And so my phone can't be ringing from my staff the whole time. So I'm like, you know what? I'm giving you as much information as you can. If you really need something, please, please, please call me. But like, I really don't think you're going to need anything. So that's kind of what that process looks like.
So you mentioned Mary Rice. I got to point out she's a friend of the show, and she has been a guest also.
Oh, I love her.
She's great. No, it was probably one of our better podcasts. She was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, you're our second female guest after Mary Rice.
We're trying to diversify our guest list.
Yeah, I've done interviews with multiple. We had Kelsey Gomes. I had Kelsey Gomes on an interview, and Courtney Banghart, probably the most pro woman guy in South Carolina. Okay, Don, did you get what you needed about on campus?
Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, she gave a bunch, probably more than what I expected. So I appreciate that. I definitely learned a lot from all this, and I kind of observed some of this stuff from afar. So I definitely learned a lot.
Don sees me like running around outside. They're like, we're pulling up with this recruit. And I'm like, I don't see you. You're not. Like, you're really not. And they're like, Alex, we're at the stoplight. I'm like, okay, well, that means you haven't pulled up yet. So I'm out here waiting. So
yeah.
I mean, Don's been doing this forever, man. You're part of the scene at UNC football recruiting.
I'm
You're
old.
the OG, right?
Something like that. I've been called lots of names. I don't know. OG is probably one of the nicer ones.
All right, Alex, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on the scoop, and we'll talk to you maybe down the line a little bit.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
Bye, guys.
All right, welcome back into the scoop. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Alex White. Don, right to you.
Yeah,
we
I got a comment on the interview.
No, I mean, to be honest here, we did talk to her
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So, but I'll tell you what I remember most about it. She has a great personality. She's very outgoing. I don't know if bubbly is the right word, but effervescent. And you can see you have to have that personality for that role. And I thought what an interesting thing she said is how a lot of the coaches and the dads and the players talk, but as a woman, she's able to kind of relate to the moms, relate to the sisters, the grandma, the aunts, and that is a different part of the recruiting process that she can kind of utilize being a woman herself. And also, I remember we talked about this for a while, how she moved. I mean, it kind of gives you a glimpse of this business where she was at UNC, and then she got a promotion to a different position at App, and then she got another promotion to Virginia Tech, and then she was brought back to work under Mac, I think kind of as his kind of personal assistant type role before she got the role she has now. And that was all within, I think she said like 16 months. So it kind of shows you the business. Now you probably interact with her a little bit more, just being on campus and around the players at camps. Anything to add about the Alex White interview and her as a person? In
a lot of situations, she is the first face that recruits and parents see when they get on campus. And so there have been many, 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 many times where I'm someplace and I can hear her loud, excited voice say, welcome or whatever, hi, and that sort of thing. And it's something that you definitely hear from, I don't know, football field away. So she's very, very welcoming. She's one of those that's, is running here and there, she's doing a lot of stuff all over the place, definitely works very, very hard. As I mentioned, I remember when she was a student kind of helping out, and she stuck out because just how hard she was working, all the different things she did. She also worked with Gunnar Brewer, and Gunnar Brewer, anybody who's working underneath Gunnar Brewer is going to be working a lot, and some people don't last, and she did. And I think that kind of just tells you what her work ethic and her desire to do well is like. And yeah, I mean, I think she fits perfect for the job. And the fact that she went to North Carolina, loves North Carolina, loves sports, that's very evident just kind of talking to her. And I think that's what you want from the person who has that position.
Yeah, you gotta have a passion for it, and a passion. You have to enjoy Carolina football, want to help Carolina football, and also have a passion for people and almost get energy from interacting with people in that kind of role. She also talked about working under Annie Martin, who's now Annie Hansen, who now is one of the premier kind of directors of recruiting. I think she's an assistant athletic director in a similar role at USC under Lincoln Riley. And we both, she was at UNC when we were covering recruiting as well. It's an important role for UNC, and she does more than just plan visits. That's a huge role, planning on-campus visits. I mean, that stuff takes days and weeks to plan, a visit weekend. But every day they're reaching out to recruits, and she has a huge role along with Patrick and all their support staff in the recruitment for UNC. All right, good stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving right along. Okay, so you want to talk about transfer portal? You just want to get into it? So the May 1st was the last. Was that right? May 1st was the last day?
So you had to be in. You have to be in the portal May 1st in order to be eligible to play this season.
Yeah.
I had gotten that wrong when I spoke to a couple of people on the message board. So I wanted to be clear. I did, so that's the rule.
And it's the same for basketball, because UNC had a basketball player enter like the night of as well, which is in basketball.
I don't know anything about foosball.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so what's your question?
Well, I just wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, I think the main thing was, I think for me, like a lot of other people, kind of cool, just kind of, floating along. The Jahmyr Gibbs thing to Alabama was didn't feel great, but you kind of ignore it. But then I guess it was over the weekend, or maybe it was during the draft, the Jordan Addison stuff kind of made me like, I don't know. It was a little different for me because the fact that it clearly looks like USC went to, a good player at Pitt, a good wide receiver at Pitt.
I mean, not just good. He was the first team all ACC. Was he Biletnikoff too?
He was either a finalist or he won the award. So arguably the top wide receiver in the nation, and they basically bought him. And
he hasn't committed yet, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he has not committed yet. But
all signs indicate he's going to transfer.
Yeah, there's just a lot of smoke there.
The issue is tampering, and honestly, I have not. This was kind of thrown on me by Don in the last couple of minutes, but Pat Narduzzi. So there's an issue of tampering, like before he's in the transfer portal, of other schools and USC here reaching out, making deals, talking to him, talking to his people, offering NIL deals, and that's illegal to tampering because you can't do it while they're still a member of the other team. Once they enter the portal, it's a fair game. And so I believe Pat Narduzzi called Lincoln Riley and complained and called him out for that. And so I definitely read up more about this, but it's a larger issue that we've talked about. This is the Wild West now.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere. The one-time transfer rule and the NIL money is crazy. I was actually hanging out with a buddy yesterday, and what's stopping a big donor from being, hey, come to my kid's birthday party and I'll give you, $500,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything illegal about that. You're providing a service now, maybe 30 minutes, but the money can be whatever they want to give that they think works within the capitalistic system. You're providing a service, you can't just directly give them money, though I'm sure that happens all the time. But that combined, NIL is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The deals are getting bigger. They're figuring out loopholes, and you're seeing it happen, and it's now influencing players' decisions with where they commit to and influencing where they transfer to. And it certainly helped UNC in basketball. I think people are seeing the advantage of NIL for basketball at UNC, and it's helping some schools for football for sure, where these donors can promise big deals in return for the football player to commit or to transfer.
Yeah, and it's I guess my fear is that it ruins the game. I mean, because ultimately, I mean, I'm sure you're just like me. I mean, we do this because we love college football, and I'm sure you love college sports. And it just, if it comes down to we're only like, I don't know, half a dozen teams are really like viable. Like I get it. Like, I mean, there's certain teams that they're always going to compete for national championships, but there is, I don't know. It just feels like it just widens that gap between the haves and the have-nots. And it doesn't feel right that Southern Cal was able to pull a great player off of Pitt's roster.
Yeah.
And, especially because I feel like on the football level, UNC is kind of on that same level as Pitt, and so if it could happen to Pitt, it could definitely happen to UNC. Not that I'm necessarily looking out for UNC, but I'm just saying, now there was something that came out the other day about a task force being put together to try to I guess reel in these boosters who are getting involved. I just don't know if there's anything they can really do because the Supreme Court kind of ruled on some of this stuff, and it's going to make it very difficult to combat it. And I mean, what this comes down to, and this has always been the issue with college football for the past 20 or more years, is that this is a professional game, whether we like it or not, and they're trying to fit it within a scholastic box, and it's just not possible. Yeah. And so no matter what, we're always going to have problems, and it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, money drives everything, like always, in all aspects of life. And so if you have a big donor or a good NIL system, then you're going to have some advantages. And like you said, it's going to make the rich richer. You can get better players. And USC's high profile, just like Alabama, Georgia. I mean, SEC, you're a little bit more high profile than say the Big 12 or the Pac 12 or whatever. So teams need to figure out NIL stuff. It's the real deal now. You're seeing how it impacts transfers and impacts commitments. I don't know. At the highest level of recruits and transfers is a big deal, but like Corey Gaynor, Noah Taylor, like that didn't have an impact.
Yeah.
I don't think those guys can make a lot of money in the NIL. I think it only impacts like the biggest high profile offensive players or stud defensive player.
Oh, absolutely. Because I get asked all the time, what do you think NIL is affecting things with North Carolina? And really, if you're looking at the guys that North Carolina is recruiting right now, Noah Rogers, beyond that, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Most of their guys that they're recruiting, like Nolan McConnell right now, maybe I'm misreading this completely, but I don't see him as a guy that chose North Carolina because he was going to get more money from UNC boosters over UVA. I
just don't think the football itself provide. Like, I think basketball's
different.
Football's a helmet sport. I mean, and only the highest profile players, like a Josh Downs or Sam Howell, really, is probably the only two players that can make any sort of significant money. Significant money. Now, some players can do little local deals here and there.
Yeah.
Brian Anderson did something with a tire company. Yeah, I don't know how much these deals are going for either. Maybe it's just they're getting a discount on their own services. But I mean, I know Sam Howell made a significant amount of money. Bryce Young at Alabama, and Kenny Pickett at Pitt, the quarterback for USC, like those high profile, like a Reggie Bush could have made tons.
Yeah.
Who was this quarterback?
Matt Leinart,
Vince Young.
But no, it's crazy. Players. Think about guys like Tate Martell. Like I know he was a complete bust, but coming out of high school, like he would have made a ton.
Where did he go first?
He committed to Texas A&M and then ended up Ohio State. Is that where he signed?
Yeah, I don't know. And then he went to Miami.
And he went to Miami, yeah.
But think about Johnny Manziel. I mean, these guys made money. He knowingly, he's committed to making money, and it's always going to be there now. It's just more public.
Before we go to the next topic, what do you think, based off this NIL stuff, what do you think college football looks like, barring some sort of crazy change that we're not expecting? What do you think college football looks like 5-10 years? I'm just really throwing this on Ross. So
yeah, I don't really know what you're asking for, but I think there's gonna be some payment where,
like, do you think because the way I'm thinking is that I think certain schools like Southern Cal, for example, becomes a power, and Texas, because of their money, becomes a power. Texas
is that what you're asking? Is that what you're asking?
Well, just like, because I feel like what will happen is that there'll be like probably like, I don't know, 6 to 10 programs that will be power programs, and they basically get all the top kids.
But isn't that how it already is? There's only 6 teams that can win the championship. Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon.
Oregon hasn't, but
they played for a title, and maybe Texas, USC. Like there's really football. There's only about 4 or 5 schools every year that can win a title, maybe 6 to 8. Occasionally you get scored. Michigan State was in the Final Four. You had Cincinnati in the Final Four. So
maybe it just makes the dreams like a Cincinnati. It makes that even less likely.
Yeah, I think because recruiting allows the biggest schools to keep landing talent, unlike the NFL where there's a draft and there's more parity. Basketball, on the other hand, I think UNC, you got bench players, Puff Johnson signing NL deals. There's a lot of money for UNC basketball just because of how big it is nationally, whereas I think UNC football is more of a regional sport. You don't have UNC football fans in California or in England or across the country. It's more, in the area.
Even like, I always ask recruits when I first interview them in-state, I ask them, what school do you grow up rooting for? And so many of them, and there are definitely some who say North Carolina football, but so many of them say North Carolina just for basketball. Then I kind of sort of started to watch the football, but UNC basketball.
People love UNC basketball. I don't know how. Obviously this is not breaking news here, but like growing up in high school, first of all, tons of guys love UNC basketball, but tons of the girls I was friends with in high school loved Carolina basketball. They did not love Carolina football. There's not that same fan base. Now there's a diehard fan base. They're probably listening to this podcast right now that love UNC football, that are huge Carolina football fans, but it's just not as widespread across the state and across the country. Man, UNC basketball, just like Duke and Kentucky and Kansas, are national brands, just like Alabama, Georgia is in football. So there's more money made on the NL side for basketball.
Yeah, so that's what the interesting thing with UNC is that it's going to benefit tremendously basketball-wise, but I think it's going to be hurt football-wise.
Yeah, I think there's still some allure with the Carolina Blue and the Jordan brand, and if you can get some studs in here, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of big-time donors that love Carolina football. They can kind of facilitate that, and that's kind of what, aren't we doing that thing with Heels for Life and everything, where different ways to different collectives? All right, anyway. All right, next topic, Don. Last topic. You ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, the NFL draft. Let me pull up.
So how much, what was your viewing habits with this draft?
Great question. I watched the whole first round.
Okay.
And that's the only thing I watched. Now I monitored because for my job, I check my phone all the time. I get little look behind the curtain. I have Twitter alerts turned on for everything. Mm-hmm. So anything that happens UNC news, I can see that immediately if it's tweeted out. So I watched it because Greg had something to do Thursday night. So I was kind of in charge of the first night. If Sam got drafted, he did not get drafted. And that's the only, I love the first round, but then after that, it's kind of like, all the big names are kind of gone. You're kind of just waiting for UNC players or a quarterback here and there. That's a long Friday and Saturday if you watch the whole draft. What about you?
So I used to be a huge draft junkie, like watch it all, do research, all that weird stuff. But this time, my daughter has basketball workouts at night and I go to that. And so I had it on my tablet. So I was watching it, and I think there was something else on too. Maybe the Phillies were on. So I was kind of flipping back and forth. But I definitely was monitoring where guys were going. I always had the tracker up from NFL.com, just when the picks are being updated, just to kind of see. Because really, if you think about it, that's all that matters. I don't know. I don't care too much for the analysis too much.
You're not as big an NFL fan, I think, as I am. Because I like to follow NFL and fantasy football. And so knowing where players go, I enjoy that. I actually listen to a lot of draft podcasts the week up just to kind of get the names going. And this week as well. But is it cool for you to see these players that you covered when they're 16, 17 finally get drafted and have their dreams come true?
Yeah, and what was really kind of cool was so I know Ike Iwano's coach, who's now coaching in South Carolina now, really well. So we're Facebook friends, and so he actually was able to go to the him and actually I think Jupiter Wilson.
I heard that name before in my life.
Coach at he played at Carolina also. I think they both went to the draft. So Iguano's coach had a bunch of photos from like behind the scenes, like when they're sitting backstage in the green room and everything like that. And that was really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, no, it's definitely because there's so many, like, there's a lot of moments for me. Like, I'm obviously watching to see when Sam gets drafted, but there's a lot of guys like, oh, I remember that guy, sort of thing. Like, I remember when UNC recruited that guy. So there was a lot of that happening too. That was pretty cool.
Hey, so Ike Ikwano, who actually obviously went to NC State from Charlotte, Providence High School, I believe. Providence Day School. What happened because his recruitment, I'm looking at his profile right now. He was a 3-star recruit, number 612 in the nation. So kind of a mid-level 3-star, 36 ranked guard, number 26 player in the state of North Carolina, goes number 6 overall. What happened between him and UNC? Because this guy, I mean, talk about a dime in the rough, not obviously was a big guy but not, I mean, 26 in North Carolina, like UNC sometimes doesn't even touch those players.
Yeah. So the crazy thing was he has I believe the twin brother who was like, I think like a 4-star linebacker. And I can't remember where his brother went, but everybody wanted him. There was other, Providence Day always has this where they go through certain years and they have like 5 guys all of a sudden, like they're going through that right now or about to. And, Jacoby Cowan was, when he was being recruited, there was a bunch of guys, but anyway, so they always had these spurts, but yeah, so there was other kids on that team, and Icky was one that not many schools recruited. And like I said, his twin brother was more heavily recruited. UNC offered his twin brother, did not offer Icky, and NC State did. And,
yeah,
the rest is kind of history.
Top offensive tackle in the country and drafted there, Ike Ikwano. That's just crazy. It shows you try to project offensive linemen. It's the hardest position to project in recruiting. And then it's all about development. If you got a guy with the right tools, the right mentality, who can grow and who has the athletic ability, which sometimes you can see at a young age, and then you add the size, you can formulate a really good player. Okay, well, let's go through quickly as we wrap up here. Let's go through UNC's draft. Joshua Zudu was the first UNC player selected, number 67 overall in the 3rd round by the Giants. And then on Saturday, so that was Friday.
Did you expect him to be the first one?
No, I expected Sam to be the first one.
Okay.
Of course. And then Sam Howell went the first pick in the 5th round on Saturday, after the whole 4th round Saturday, in the 5th round, number 144 overall to the Washington Commanders, where he'll be on the same team as Dami Brown and Cole Holcomb. Then a couple picks later, Ty Chandler, number 169 overall to the Minnesota Vikings. And then Marcus McKeithen was the last and 4th player taken from the Tar Heels. He went a couple picks later, 163 to the Giants as well. So the Giants picked 2 UNC guards. Yeah. And then so obviously the story here, look, Sam Howell dropped a lot. He dropped, I think I saw some number where almost like 100 picks below his Vegas projection. You can there's like these, obviously Vegas projects, you can pick over under where they pick. I don't know why. I think there's some. Why do you think he dropped? I mean, what happened?
I don't know, but I mean, there's stuff out there about not being good in interviews, stuff out there about not being good on the whiteboard. One of the things that kind of popped in my mind that I was wondering is the offense that he plays in is the air raid offense. It's not an offense. Yes, I understand there's certain elements that pro offenses have adapted into their playbooks, but it's still not an offense that has a whole lot of respect. And so I wonder, and some of it is because it does make it easier for the quarterbacks. The quarterback can go quicker, and the pro game, you're playing against more sophisticated defenses, so you have to have sophisticated offenses, and so there's concerns about that. And I think really what it comes down to, and this has always been the case with Sam, is that he's an intangible guy. Like even in high school, I mean, he didn't have, he wasn't the tallest, didn't have like the strongest arm, didn't have the most accurate arm, all this sort of stuff. But he was more of a guy that you give him the ball, he makes things happen. He's not the greatest runner, but he is such an effective runner, which is so weird to say because I know I'm kind of contradicting myself. But that's just kind of Sam is like, I guess you kind of look at him, you look at his tools, but he just outperforms those things. So for me, I was like, all right, if a team falls in love with his intangibles, he'll be a first round pick. If not, then he won't. I didn't expect it to be all the way into the 5th round.
Yeah.
But it was almost kind of crazy. It was like watching a car wreck, to be honest.
Yeah, and
what do you think?
And he had that house rented out with all the family there. UNC sent a social media guy there. So that guy must have been there Thursday, all Friday. The Friday
got
wait.
Paid overtime. He got overtime.
He's on salary. The Friday wait had to be kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because you expected him to be a 2nd, 3rd round pick after not going. I mean, we were prepared for him to go 32nd overall to Detroit. That's kind of where we thought, if he went 1st round, obviously he didn't. That's where he would have gone. So we were like, all right, definitely 2nd round, 3rd round. But in that whole night, just waiting for your name, and then didn't go. And then Saturday, you wait through a whole nother round. I think the offensive thing could be true. I don't think it's a knock on Longo's offense. I think it's just a simple offense. It's easy to learn, which works well for Carolina and for UNC and for college football players to come in. It's quick, it's simple, it's effective. I mean, Sam killed it. Look how productive him and his wide receivers are. You don't have as much time in college to work and to learn. So a simple, effective, quick offense where the read, there's 1-2 reads and you throw it is it works well in college, and obviously is not preferred in the pros. That might have hurt him. I think his height hurt him. I think there was it was a down group of quarterbacks overall. I think since 1997, it was the last time a quarterback went that late. Kenny Pickett, number 20, I want to say, to the Steelers. And then another one didn't go. I think Malik Willis went later on. And then the Panthers got Matt Corral, and there was a couple other quarterbacks drafted. I think the Falcons drafted the Cincinnati guy. And so I think it was a bad quarterback class combined with not many teams had needs. I mean, you got Tom Brady hanging around. You got Matt Ryan going to the Colts. You got Goff still with the Lions. You've got Wentz messing around with the Commanders still. The Panthers, they already have a quarterback, but was there anybody on the board that was going to be better than him? So I think that issue pushed him back, but I was very surprised. Anything else on Sam?
Yeah. So
I think he's an NFL quarterback. I think he's gonna have a huge chip on his shoulder. And I think if he gives a chance, I think he's got a great arm. And I think, maybe a year or two behind someone, he'll figure out their offense. And I think he'll.
Yeah, and this could end up being the best thing for him. Gives him time. Because I think a lot of times, a lot of these quarterbacks, they come out and they have a lot of talent, but they're not ready yet. And they get thrown to the wolves, and it kind of ruins them.
Yeah.
This will give them a chance to kind of, ease in. The one other topic before we close this out, Mac Brown, I thought was kind of interesting because it kind of stuck with me during the press conference, and then for whatever reason, and then watching this free fall, I kept on thinking about it. He said, and Mac Brown is very, very, very media savvy. And I always pay attention to what he says. And I always try to figure out why he says certain things, because I feel like everything has a purpose, particularly during his opening monologue. All right.
Right.
And I'm delivering one right now. Anyway, he said that he always tells his guys not to throw a party, because you just don't know. And he kept on harping on the fact that the draft is unpredictable. I wonder if Mac Brown had an idea that this could potentially happen, because he has plenty of connections who kind of give him a heads up. Hey, look, Sam, from what we're hearing, Sam's not going to get picked in the 1st round, or it's probably going to be later than what you guys expect. Am I just fishing here?
I think if you're a borderline, if you don't know where you're going to go, you're not going to be a 1st round pick. I want to throw. It's like the guys that go to the draft in the city, Vegas, and don't get picked the first day. Then the cameras on. Remember Aaron Rodgers? I mean, he got picked in the first round, but they don't show them anymore. They don't do that as much because Malik Willis was there. He get picked the second round, I think. So yeah, I think that makes sense. So maybe he did have clue into that, but Sam had plenty of people at his house.
Well, Sam didn't take the advice.
Well, yeah, I'm sure the party was bigger on Friday and Saturday than it was. Has his girlfriend by him as well. Azudu I think Azudu's versatile. He went to the Giants. I think Ty Chandler will have a chance with the Vikings. Marcus Keithan, he's a little slow and big. He might have a trouble making a roster spot, but they did draft him pretty high. And then we'll go through the undrafted free agents, get out of here, because I think there's some value there. Jeremiah Gimmel, a guy that I think some people projected would be drafted, maybe entering the 2021 season. He had an injury through the process. 49ers for him. Tamon Fox with the Giants. Jordan Tucker with the Steelers. Garrett Walston to the 49ers. Kyler McMichael, who opted out of the bowl game, signed with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And then Grayson Atkins, actually DM'd with him. He is going to the Colts for a workout, a mini camp invite workout. So he's not signed yet, but he's trying to get onto a roster heading into training camp.
Yeah.
All right.
I think some of that, if you look at it, it's measurables. McKeithen and Azudu have measurables. Mom Fox, Gimmel don't, and I think that's really big in the NFL, which is why 24/7 Sports values measurables when it comes to their rankings because they're trying to project NFL.
I think Gimmel, just his approach, how smart he is, could have a chance as a backup linebacker and a special teams guy. I think he is, of those guys, he might have the best chance of making a roster.
And linebackers aren't as valued anymore like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different game.
Yeah. All right, Don, anything else?
I just hope that you have a wonderful day.
We covered a lot. We covered a lot of real estate.
You made my day brighter, and I hope you continue to do that.
Yep. Any more commitments coming?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But by the time you listen, this could be another. I don't know.
There you go. All right, guys. Appreciate you listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the interview with Alex White. I want to thank Alex White. Go back to listen to the Patrick Suddas interview if you missed that from 2 weeks ago, and we will check you next time. Appreciate Johnny T-shirt, johnnyt-shirt.com. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the Inside Carolina podcasts.